Okay, just getting started on sections. I've already made a start, but I'll just have a run through. You can see where we've got section 1 cut through here, running all the way through the stairwell, through the garage, so we can see this wall. There's a box gutter here, right through to the other end, and I've just skimmed right through that cavity sliding door there and through the garage, just cut through that area as well. So section 1, I've started some detailing here. I'll just switch that back to a thin line. Just started putting all these bits and pieces in. You can see here, it's probably easier to see the stuff in the closer detail in the actual detail, so we'll go there in a moment. I've just started mapping things, cutting and pasting backwards and forwards between my detail and my section. So I would put my bottom plate, my nogging, my top plate, top of the parapet wall, start mapping all these bits and pieces. Rafter, the insulation, some extra lines and bits and pieces going on in the floor joists. There's another wall, so it'll need plates, insulation, all of those things. There's another, floor to garage, and the from bedroom down to the garage will need to be insulated as well. There's trusses, box gutters. So these are all just detail items, and just using detail lines to go all the way through. I'll just tag that room. Create similar. There it is. Just tagging the area. So it's just about drawing all that information in and starting to do the documentation as we spoke of in the presentation. So just having a quick look at the detail. I've started putting this together. Probably the best option I can come up with as a quick fix for this roof sitting over the living area is to put the rafters in flat. Purely horizontal, and then the slope of the roof will be determined by what we call graded battens. So the first batten across the top here is sitting at 90mm, and then we just increase the size of each of these battens over the top to create the fall. The sloping insulation graphic that I've got happening there, you can see there that it's just a piece of 40mm wide insulation with a little bit of solid white filled region representing the curve arc of the sarking. It's like an anticon, which is an insulated sarking, and you can see there that it actually hangs over into the box gutter. We've got the gutter board sitting underneath. We've got flashings going over. You can see that the flashing slopes inwards, so when it's raining and it's wet, the dribbles and the moisture then travels down into the box gutter, and very importantly I've got that drip on that flashing as well, so any water that runs down doesn't proceed to dribble down the wall and leave stains, things like that. We try to put a hefty flashing on so that it doesn't dribble. I've added these battens. I've used some invisible lines using modify and line work. There should be an invisible line option here if you want to hide different lines in different places. If they're modelled in place, you need to hide a line, then we can use the invisible lines to get rid of those lines. So I'll just undo that so it doesn't mess with me too much. So I'm just pulling this apart and I'm just copying backwards and forwards between the section and the details. It's probably need to keep going with the section first before we go anywhere. Draw those rafters in place. This little fascia out here will be top plate, bottom plate, studs in there, some battens so that we can put our cladding on there. We've got an eave linings probably going to be supported from that rafter. We've got a lintel sitting in here, hopefully it'll fit in that space, and battens underneath. Top plate, bottom plate, nogging, top plate, bottom plate, nogging, insulation, battens for the cladding, notations all the way around. We need a gutter on here, and the fascia and the eave linings needs to be noted, so notations all the way through. You can notate the parapet wall behind or something like that. So lots to do, lots to specify and draw. So I hope that helps just to get started. As we saw in the previous video, how I created these views here is purely just by drawing up this section, all the details in there as we discussed. In the section I will then duplicate with detail, and with the crop view turned on we shrink it down. This is how we can create our views for detailing. So if we need to pull out a detail of that area there, we can do that. Change the scale 1 to 10 if it's going to be a particularly big one. Save it as a different name, and then that becomes the detail drawing, which inherits all of the drawn items in there. These are just detail lines and filled regions and bits and pieces. I've lost the some of the editing, so I've used some invisible lines here to let's cancel that. Line work, invisible lines on the bottom of where this wall sits, just so that we can see where the flashing is sitting. The roof didn't quite go long enough, so I've just hit that with the invisible line and drew some additional lines on there. They were 0.35 pen, just to extend the roof to show exactly where I want it to sit. I'm not going to alter the modelling of that, just going to indicate it like that so that it's clear. Yeah, so that's how we put all that together. That generates these little call-outs for us as we need, but don't need that one obviously, so I'll delete that one. But we do need these other two, and as you drag them onto sheets, the little bubble will populate. Sections. Let's get started.